Hello and welcome to Fernbank Science Center's The Sky This Week for the end of June, beginning of July 2021. Some constellations from mythology this week and a last quarter moon on July 1st. Start toward the beginning of the week, June 28th, either really late at night or really early in the morning, whichever you like, and look toward the southeast part of the sky. Figuring out where southeast is from where your observing site is located, wherever you are, think of where the sun appears to rise. That's the eastern part of the sky. Put your left shoulder in that direction, and you'll be facing the southeast part of the sky. Jupiter and Saturn, two of the largest planets in our solar system, are visible, except they're not going to look like big dots like they look here. On the real sky, they appear as very bright star-looking objects, Jupiter much brighter than Saturn. They're a lot farther away from the sun than Earth is, but they're a lot bigger than Earth is. So they reflect the sunlight and make nice, bright, star-looking objects on the early morning sky. On June 28th, the moon is in its waning phase this year. It was full last week. Now, as it continues to move along its orbit, we're seeing less and less of the lit up side of the moon. Over toward the south a little bit more, though, are those two mythological beast constellations that we were talking about earlier. We talked about Sagittarius, the Archer, and Scorpius, the Scorpion. The Scorpion is one of those constellations that actually looks like what it's supposed to be, a scorpion. It has a long J shape or fishhook tail. There's a bright star, Antares, that's supposed to be its heart, if scorpions have hearts. And there's a couple of stars for the front head and shoulders of where the scorpion is on the sky. Scorpius, the scorpion, one of the zodiacal constellations, is followed on the sky by Sagittarius, the archer, the guy with the bow and arrow. And it's a little difficult to see Sagittarius. I mean, you need a good imagination for these anyway. But there's a portion of the Sagittarius constellation shaped a little bit like a teapot, an asterism, it's called. If you remember that little song, here's the teapot, here's the handle, here's the top, here's the spout of the teapot. You can imagine the clouds of the Milky Way galaxy as the steam rising. And if you look at where those are in the early morning sky on June 28th, if you wait 24 hours, let the Earth move 1.6 million miles along its orbit, let the moon move along its orbit as well, you get the moon as it's moved, and it appears to be in a different place relative to Jupiter and Saturn. It's moved along its orbit a bit. It looks a little bit thinner, not quite so much moon as we saw last night. And by the 30th, it's moved way off between Jupiter and Saturn. If you're looking for Sagittarius and Scorpius during those early morning hours, and those constellations rise hours earlier. So if you want to find Sagittarius and Scorpius earlier in the evening, 9 or 10 o'clock, they'll be rising more toward the east. About midnight is when Jupiter and Saturn rise and the moon comes up with them. And July 1st is when we have our last quarter moon or third quarter moon. The moonlight appears on the left-hand side of the moon. It looks like about half a moon. Binoculars, you can use those to look at this terminator, this line in between the daytime and nighttime sides of the moon, and notice crater shadows and mountains. Even little binoculars work quite well for showing that. As I said, it's on July 1st this year. Technically, it's at 5:11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. For us here in the Atlanta area, the sun is still up at 5:11 p.m., so we will not see that last quarter moon until much later in the evening. Look, if you look a little bit more closely at that Sagittarius and Scorpius region, this is a giveaway, that star Antares. So here's the long fishhook shape for Scorpius. This is a very large constellation. When you find this across the sky, it's huge. If you use your left hand measuring stick, hold your left arm straight out in front of you, lock your elbow, spread out your fingers as wide as they'll go. And if you put the tip of your pinky finger on the end of the scorpion's tail, it's several hand widths to get across that constellation. The teapot shape in Sagittarius, it's a little bit smaller, maybe a palm and a half across. And when you're looking in this direction towards Sagittarius and the tail of the scorpion, you're looking toward the center of our Milky Way galaxy, deep into the heart of star clusters. Sagittarius takes the form of a centaur, an imaginary or mythological creature. Maybe you're familiar with them from mythology stories or from the Harry Potter movies. And the centaur, if you imagine somebody shooting a bow and arrow. So here's the centaur. He's got his arm crooked back, pulling the string of his bow. The arrow is facing this way, and he's shooting toward the tail of the scorpion. Use a lot of imagination for that one. Good luck in finding these constellations this week. Especially, you're going to need a clear, dark sky, no clouds in the way. And with the moon, even as waning as it is, there'll be a lot of moonlight. So you might have to look pretty hard to find those constellations. Thanks again for listening. Please keep in touch with Fernbank Science Center's website at www.fernbank.edu. Find our Facebook page for Friday evening virtual planetarium lessons and Saturday science, and have a great week.